Imagine standing in a courtroom, watching as a killer is brought to justice. Not because of a detective's work, but because of the victim herself. And not in the flesh, but in spirit. This is no ghost story from a campfire. It's the real-life tale of Zona Heaster Shue, known as the Greenbrier Ghost. It's a case that's defied logic, law, and science for over a century. How could a spirit solve her own murder? Let's dive into one of history's strangest supernatural mysteries. One that will make you question everything you thought you knew about life, death, and justice. Our story starts in the remote, quiet town of Greenbrier County, West Virginia, in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. It's 1897. Greenbrier, like many small towns of the time, is isolated, cut off from the bustle of city life, making it a close-knit community where everyone knows everyone else's business. Life here is simple, rugged, and deeply rooted in tradition. So, when tragedy strikes, it leaves an indelible mark on the town. Zona Heaster, known to everyone as simply Zona, was a young woman with a lively spirit, known for her kind-hearted nature and cheerful smile. People described her as warm and welcoming, the type of person who made friends quickly. Life changed for Zona when she met Erasmus Stribling Trout Shue, a blacksmith who had recently moved to Greenbrier. Trout was strong, with rough hands and an intense presence, a mysterious figure to many in town. To others, he was a hard worker trying to carve out a new life. The romance between Zona and Trout was swift. They married within months, much to the surprise of the townsfolk. Mary Jane Heaster, Zona's mother, had misgivings. She sensed the darkness in Trout, a foreboding feeling she couldn't shake, yet there was little she could do to prevent the marriage. As time passed, Zona's bright demeanor seemed to dim, and she began to withdraw, but most attributed this to the challenges of adjusting to married life. On January 23, 1897, a young boy from the neighborhood was sent by Trout to run an errand. When the boy entered the Shue household, he was met with a shocking sight. Zona lay lifeless at the foot of the stairs, arms frozen by her side, eyes wide open, as if she had been caught off guard. In shock, the boy sprinted back to tell Trout, who arrived moments later. The grief-stricken husband held her body close, refusing to let anyone touch her. When Dr. George Knapp, the town physician, finally arrived, he was met with resistance. Trout was overly protective, cradling Zona's head and resisting attempts to thoroughly examine her body. The doctor managed only a cursory examination, noting a faint bruise around her neck, but couldn't investigate further. Trout's overwhelming distress and insistence were so intense that Dr. Knapp's initial cause of death was recorded as everlasting faint. Later, this was amended to childbirth complications, an odd diagnosis, especially as Zona hadn't shown signs of pregnancy. The case was seemingly closed, and Zona was buried in a quiet ceremony. But as the days turned to weeks, Mary Jane Hester's grief transformed into suspicion. Something about her daughter's sudden death felt wrong. Her motherly intuition kept gnawing at her, a feeling she couldn't shake. For nights on end, Mary Jane prayed. She begged for some sign, some truth that would explain the unease growing inside her. And one night, as she lay between sleep and wakefulness, Zona appeared. The first encounter was vague, like a dream. But in the nights that followed, Zona's ghost came again, each time growing clearer, her presence undeniable. Zona revealed the horrors she had endured, claiming that her husband had ended her life in a fit of rage. She even described the brutal way her neck had been twisted. Now, here's something truly eerie. Zona's ghost didn't just tell her mother about the murder. She showed her. She tilted her head, showing Mary Jane the exact way her neck had been broken. Imagine the terror and urgency Mary Jane must have felt, waking up night after night, the image of her daughter's twisted neck etched into her mind. Now, here's an extraordinary fact. The Greenbrier Ghost case became the only known instance in the United States where a ghost testimony played a role in convicting a murderer. This was the first, and only, case where a spirit's testimony led to a murder conviction. How often do you hear of a ghost taking the stand, if only through the testimony of a grieving mother? Mary Jane's experience wasn't something she kept to herself. Driven by her supernatural visions, she went to local prosecutor John Preston and insisted that the case be reopened. Her story was met with skepticism. Ghostly apparitions weren't exactly considered reliable evidence, but Preston couldn't ignore the detail in her account. he decided to act, if only to quiet the rumors spreading around town. Zona's body was exhumed, and this time, an official autopsy was performed with witnesses present. The findings were chilling. Her neck was indeed broken, as were the bones of her windpipe and ligaments, indicating strangulation. The autopsy corroborated every detail Mary Jane had relayed from her visions. The bruising around Zona's neck, the twist in her head, all pointed to foul play. This discovery shook the town to its core. Mary Jane had described what only someone who had witnessed the crime would know. Had her visions truly been a communication from the afterlife? Or was this the result of a mother's intuition and fierce determination? Trout was arrested, and the trial became a spectacle. Crowds flocked to the courthouse, eager to witness this bizarre and unprecedented event. The defense tried to discredit Mary Jane, suggesting that grief had caused her to imagine these visions, or worse, that she was fabricating the whole story. But Mary Jane's calm, unwavering account stood firm. Her testimony spoke of a love for her daughter so fierce it crossed realms, a determination so strong it defied death itself. Though the judge warned the jury to disregard supernatural elements, the physical evidence was undeniable, and it painted Trout in a chilling light. Witnesses came forward with tales of Trout's violent tendencies, and the jury was left to decide between reason and something more otherworldly. In the end, the jury reached a verdict. Trout Shue was found guilty of Zona's murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. Some townsfolk whispered that justice had been served, but not by the courts alone, by a mother's love and a daughter's spirit. Trout died in prison just a few years later, his name forever linked to one of America's most mysterious and haunting murder cases. Zona's story didn't end with the trial. To this day, locals claim you can feel her presence, especially on winter nights when the wind sweeps through Greenbrier. Some say Zona still watches over the area, her spirit forever linked to the land and her final plea for justice. The Greenbrier Ghost is remembered as one of the most unusual cases in American legal history, blending law and the supernatural in a way that has captivated generations. It raises questions that linger in the mind. Could this be a case of divine justice from beyond the grave? Or was it simply the love and intuition of a mother that pushed Mary Jane to uncover the truth? So, what do you think? Was this a supernatural intervention, a ghost demanding justice, or a mother's grief guiding her to the truth? The Greenbrier Ghost story remains one of the most fascinating tales of the paranormal crossing into reality, of life beyond death, and of a justice that knows no bounds. And if you're ever in Greenbrier County, keep an eye out. You might just encounter a whisper, a chill, a flicker in the dark that reminds you of Zona's final stand for justice. If you found this story intriguing, subscribe for more tales that walk the line between fact and fiction, between the natural and the supernatural.